please use your chat or your question function if you have any kind of questions or concerns during this webinar. We will get started shortly. You are all on mute. Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're going to get started in a few minutes. You all are currently on mute. If you have any questions during this webinar, please type them in the chat or the question box.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Josh.
Hi. Great.
I see a couple last-minute folks jumping on, so I'm going to give them a couple minutes, and then we will get started.
I think we should you should announce that to the group, right?
Josh, you're on live.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thanks, folks, for joining us today. We're going to get started in about one more minute. There's still a few folks joining us. You're all on mute. If you have any questions during this webinar, please type them into the chat box. You may also raise your hand, and we can try and unmute you at a later time. There will be a Q&A session towards the end of this webinar. Thanks for joining us. Leroy, you want to take it away?
Yes. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first of a series of webinars focused on energy literacy. Today's webinar, Energy is Everywhere. My name is Leroy Ferguson, and I work in the Office of Public and Indian Housing, Department of HUD. Currently, our office is working with the Department of Energy and the Department of Education, developing an exciting energy literacy initiative for public housing authorities and staff. Energy. Well, we know that energy is everywhere. Energy is used to fuel our cars, energy is used to cook our foods, and energy is used to provide comfort to our homes. The Office of Public and Indian Housing provides energy policy guidance to over 3,100 plus public housing authorities through regulatory language, policy notices, and resource materials. Next slide. I think it's the next one, Aaron.
The poll, Leroy?
Okay. Excuse me. Yeah, we have a poll for our public housing authorities, and what we want to do is we want to figure out, or we want to know what type of energy literacy material would you be interested in receiving to promote energy literacy among your residents? There's a quick poll right up on the screen now. We need you to select what type of material you would like to receive, whether it's brochures or events, webinars, or others. So we'll give you a moment to vote on that. And if you can go ahead and vote, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
for heaven's sake. Great, Leroy. It looks like about 74%, almost 75% of folks have entered into that first poll question, and we'll do the second poll question, okay?
Excellent. Okay.
So I'm going to lock down this first poll, and we're going to do the second poll question.
Okay.
And so that one is, have you, the PHA or MF owner, provided energy literacy information to your residents previously? So that poll is now open. If you can give us that information, that'd be great. Any last-minute pollers out there? We have a poll going for those who just joined us on whether or not you've ever provided energy literacy information to your residents in the past. Answer yes or no in your webinar box. I'm going to close the poll in a couple of seconds. Great. Okay, Leroy.
All right, next slide. Okay. So energy. We know energy is everywhere. Energy is used to fuel our cars, energy is used to cook our foods, and energy is used to provide comfort to our homes. The Office of Public and Indian Housing provides energy policy guidance to over 3,100 plus public housing authorities through regulatory language, policy notices, and resource materials. Our PHAs, through HUD energy policies, provide energy-related guidance to the residents. That's why we're interested to find out how that information is getting down to our residents. Within HUD, energy conservation efforts are closely tied to energy literacy. A big chunk of our HUD budget is spent on utility costs, and we're always looking for ways to reduce utility consumption. And PHAs are required to reduce energy consumption where cost effective.
Great. Thanks, Leroy.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Erin Twomley. I'm from Department of Energy, and I'm going to guide us through kind of how we define and think about energy literacy as it might relate to public housing folks that are on the phone and the residents and communities that you're aiming to serve. So I want you to sit at your desk for a moment and draw a picture of energy. Maybe you thought about biofuels that we grow for alternative fuel. Or maybe you just thought about wind turbines that are on the U.S. plains. Or perhaps you really just thought about that leaky door in your house that you need to fix. Or all that energy that's in your kid's school. Or maybe just the simplest form, a light bulb. We need to engage people on all aspects of energy in our lives. But this, the good old-fashioned energy data, this is not working. It's boring and it's not relevant to all the communities that we're trying to serve. We need to bring real-world examples to energy, and that's what we're striving to do here at Department of Energy. This is a screenshot of a new interactive tool that lets you explore energy uses by state by comparing the energy used to burritos, coal, and dynamite. The example on this slide is from Minnesota. There are nearly 33,265 burritos used of energy in the year 2012. This is an online interactive tool that we'll share with you to think about how we can talk about energy and new and relevant examples. So why does this all matter? We know it matters because energy choices, both individually and nationally, impact us as a society and individuals. they also impact us disproportionately so. Can you think of current activities or energy choices impacting your residents in the public housing authorities? We all have to get on board with energy literacy. So what is it? Energy literacy is the understanding of the nature and role of energy in our daily lives. We need to figure out how and why energy matters to the communities that we're trying to serve. One of the focuses of Department of Energy is how to address the huge gap in the STEM career field by getting underrepresented minorities and women in STEM. As this slide shows, nearly 80% of girls are interested in a STEM career, but only 13% end up choosing a STEM career. Energy provides a great opportunity for both women and underrepresented groups in STEM. And finally, we all know that energy literacy and financial literacy go hand in hand. Our communities and our residents need to learn how to read their electric bill and understand the energy choices that they have. Without it, this is an example of the U.S. population that we have today. A recent survey done in 2012 indicated that 75% of adults in the U.S. thought they knew a lot about energy, but less than 12% of them could actually pass an energy awareness quiz. That's a problem. So I'm going to turn it to Josh Snyderman, who can talk to us a little bit about the energy literacy framework that we use at Department of Energy to think, teach, and learn about energy.
Thanks, Erin. So the slide of the burritos is really interesting in that what Erin's trying to say is we need to connect people to concepts around energy. I'm going to go back to that slide. We need to connect people to the ideas of energy in our lives in a more, unique and enjoyable way. And so this slide is really interesting in that it's comparing how much energy an individual uses to how many burritos would that be to make that much energy. So pretty interesting stuff. As well, when we're talking about girls in STEM, it's interesting to think about the fact that if we can address energy issues in the work that we do, we might actually be encouraging young girls to enter the STEM profession, which we know has a great potential ahead. So what is energy literacy? We've used this term a bunch of times. And essentially, it's an understanding of the multiple ways energy affects our lives. And by creating a more literate group of understanding around energy, we can make better decisions for ourselves, for our communities. There's a clear national security imperative around energy, but we can also promote development, economic development. So I know that many PHAs have pending or upcoming infrastructure upgrades through efficiency and stuff. So there's a chance to tie some of that efficiency and upgrades to the learning curve that could happen there, as well as to the economic opportunities for residents. And then, I think we can always connect energy to the impacts it has on the quality of life around us. So I think the more people recognize how energy really has positive and negative environmental impacts, that's something that could resonate with many people. So, and then lastly, thinking about PHAs as a stepping stone for people, it's definitely learning about energy at any time in life and how it can help you save money in the future. So what the Department of Energy has done is created a document that's been approved by 13 federal agencies. And really, this document is saying this is what an energy literate person is. They understand that energy is interdisciplinary, that it affects the quality of life, but it also affects our economics, and that it's also the physics of energy and the biology of energy. So we have a document that we share, and this is used with people who do energy instruction around the country as really a best practices in energy education. As you can see, it's multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary, and it really is talking about what Erin had said earlier with the number of girls who become disinterested in the STEM fields. A lot of that time is some of the studies show that because we're focusing on the competitive nature in the classroom, and what girls like better than more often than boys is they like to see that they can have an impact on the future of helping people. And so that's really points 5, 6, and 7 here, that you can have you can look at energy as a way of helping society, of helping individuals, of helping communities, improving health, improving environment. And that's something we should be connecting with everyone. So that was my piece, and now we're really zipping through here, which is pretty cool because that'll leave a lot of extra time for questions and comments and discussion. And we're going to pass the microphone over to Nicole O'Connor, who is from Energy Outreach Colorado, and they're pretty amazing. So we're hoping that you pay attention to the interesting best practices that they're implementing in Colorado.
Hi, Nicole. Are you there? We'll give her a minute. She might be unmuting herself. For those of you who did take the poll earlier, we asked the question, have you ever given energy literacy material to your residents previously? 58% of you on this webinar said no, while 39% of you said yes. That's good information to us to have. And for the second poll, which is what type of energy literacy material would be most beneficial, 87% of you said brochures, 40% of you said events, and 31% of you said webinars. So that's great feedback for today that we can take back and figure out how to bring you more kind of resources and material. Nicole, are you there?
So while we try and figure out Nicole's issue real quick, I think it's really interesting the ideas about this poll that we took that you would like more 87% say events, but you also say, I'm sorry, 87% polled as brochures and events and webinars. I think it would be really interesting for you to think about what would that webinar that you would like the Department of Energy and maybe HUD to create. So some of the aspects, and when we open up the microphone later for questions, we'd love to hear some of your feedback on what could a webinar look like that's tailored specifically for your community. Nicole? Oh, she's dialing back in. So if you don't, she's back in.
Are you able to hear me now?
Oh,
there
right.
We go.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Perfect. Something happened with the phone there. I was unmuted, but it wasn't working. So thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nicole O'Connor. I'm calling from Energy Outreach Colorado. I think we have the exciting opportunity today, kind of as Josh already briefly mentioned, of connecting the energy literacy framework specifically to multifamily and public housing authority facilities. Energy Outreach Colorado is a private nonprofit here in Denver, Colorado, and our overall mission is making home energy affordable for all Coloradans. We really started as a nonprofit dedicated to utility bill assistance, and from that, especially in the more recent years, we've stemmed into energy efficiency. A lot of our energy efficiency work also is within other nonprofits and multifamily facilities that are both serving low-income families or low-income residents. We also do a lot of work on advocacy in the state of Colorado with regards to keeping energy prices affordable for the low-income population in Colorado. And so from basically, as the slide demonstrates, within our programs we also have what we refer to as our behavior change program. I've also listed it as energy conservation, energy education, energy literacy, all those things kind of tie in together, and what we're really doing is looking specifically at the behaviors of residents within the multifamily facilities, along with the other portions of our programs, which we'll refer specifically today to multifamily residents. But we look specifically at the behaviors that are taking place around energy because we're already doing energy efficiency, but we have the really unique opportunity to focus on the behavioral side of things and helping people understand their connection to their communities, how energy affects their lives, whether it is the cost or whether it's other, a broad list of impacts that energy has on their lives. Next slide. So to kind of start us off looking at the overall benefits of energy conservation, I always kind of like to refer to energy conservation or the behavioral side of energy as kind of the really important piece of the energy puzzle. We do a lot of work with energy efficiency, but my goal is to really be out working with all of the residents that are involved, that are living in the buildings, that are receiving energy efficiency, and help them understand the connection between the energy efficiency, but also how they, as a resident of the building, have an impact on the energy use that takes place. So some of the benefits, of course, usually the first one that comes to mind might be cost savings. That could be for you if you're the building owner, or looking at the overall cost savings for your facility. It could also be a cost savings for a resident. If a resident is paying, a lot of the time, we might, well, maybe like half the time we're seeing residents who pay maybe both their utility bills, gas and electric, or just an electric bill. So we'll talk a little bit today through our process of how we customize what work we do with residents to help them connect whether or not cost savings is a benefit to them. And if cost savings will not be a direct benefit for a resident, how can we then still motivate the residents to participate? We also, you see the benefit of increased lifespan of equipment. Of course, if you're using the equipment more efficiently, it's going to last longer. Another way of looking at this too is that we create an engaged community and a healthy lifestyle. Actually, just this morning I was talking to a woman in her home, and she had just moved from her previous apartment to a new apartment, and of course the utilities were structured very differently, where the housing authority had structured it where there was an excess utility charge, so they paid some of the bill, but she doesn't really fully connect that yet, where her previous apartment she had paid all of the bills. So it was again really taking the opportunity to talk with her and engage her in her new setup, and how her habits that she had developed at her previous apartment were really going to, of saving energy, were really going to impact her in her new apartment. It also is a great opportunity for to get the staff on board and getting them excited as engaging residents in a new topic. And also I like to mention that there's obviously long-term impacts that just flat out cannot be measured. Sometimes if you're able to engage your community in these types of things and they feel like they have some control over their home by reducing maybe their overall costs, or that they're making an impact on their community, there might be less turnover. Or somebody may also learn a new energy-saving habit, and they may move out of the housing authority into another home, and that habit will then have long-term impacts that could be environmental or cost-saving impacts for them. Next slide. The framework that I'm going to go through today is essentially kind of the 7 best practices of putting something like this into place. What I would like for you to take away today is, if I were to go and to do this, in my own property or my own setting, how would I go about doing this? In an ideal world, you would be able to take all 7 of these steps and spend lots and lots of time on them. But of course, I know all of us are time-strapped. So I'm going to cover these steps and give you the why, the who, and the how of achieving them, to maybe spark some ideas of how you could begin really creating a more energy-literate culture within your own organization. We'll go through understanding your community, developing the key areas of focus. I'll talk more about what that means, talking about some potential engagement strategies. We'll briefly go through kind of putting your program infrastructure together, obviously putting your program into place, and then tracking progress. And number 7, the overall goal is really creating a culture shift of this, so that way, again, the families that are living in your buildings are more overall just knowledgeable of energy, know how to kind of take control of those things and have the positive impacts of course, being an energy conservative culture will have. Next slide. Can you go to the next slide, Erin?
I did, Nicole. There might be a little bit of a delay.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and keep going. So number 1, we're actually looking first at the understanding your community. So what do I mean by that? Energy Outreach Colorado has done energy efficiency within multiple facilities. And so when I go into a building as an outsider coming in, I'm really trying to understand the different characteristics of that community. My guess is that every single person on the phone has a different, to some degree, a different set of characteristics that really define your community. And why do I think this is important? What this will do is really ensure that you're engaging residents in topics that are just more relevant to their current surroundings. And they're also their cultural context, and also their specific community to increase their buy-in. If we're going in and teaching people about energy and maybe they don't have any knowledge or care about specifically the environmental impacts of saving energy, we might want to connect it to something else. It could be maybe their health or maybe their cost savings. Again, understanding what it is they care about. Who could do this for you? It could be your own internal staff. We've definitely done it, or other housing authorities have done it. It could be the residents giving you that information. It could also be an outside research group if that's something that you want to do. And how would you go about doing that? Here's just a couple methods. There's many ways of doing it. You might already have existing knowledge of your building. That might be you. If you're the one working with residents day in and day out, don't take for granted the unlimited amount of knowledge that you already have of residents. It's just connecting it to this process. Also, maybe conducting focus groups. Spending some time talking with residents, asking them questions, helping to understand, giving you a better understanding of what is going on. A really good example that I have from recently is that we were talking with residents about turning off lights, and we found that many residents actually left lights and some of their electronics, like televisions, on when they weren't home, primarily to signal that they wanted people to think they were actually home, and that was kind of a safety thing. So when we go through these additional steps that I'll highlight here in a second, we were able to kind of achieve that with more strategic strategies versus just saying, well, you should be turning your lights off and saving energy, helping understand why they currently weren't doing that and seeing if we could provide other resources to that. You could also conduct surveys, and there's multiple other methods that you could go about. So if you could go to the next slide. And the next step, number 2, developing your key areas of focus. This is kind of where I like to narrow it down a little bit. The purpose of developing your key areas of focus is thinking, well, what is it that do we actually want to accomplish? Energy conservation is a really broad word. Saving energy is really a broad term. What does that mean? If I as a resident am learning something completely new and I don't necessarily know how to save energy, if somebody's telling me to save energy, I don't really know what kinds of actions to take from there. The other side of it could be they already are saving energy, but they don't necessarily know they're doing it. It might be just an embedded habit. So the purpose is really engaging residents in specific energy-saving behaviors that are actually really achievable based on their community characteristics. If I go in and ask people to turn off their lights and they're not feeling very safe, they're probably not going to do it. There might be something else that we need to achieve. Who could be the ones doing it? Again, an external, outside research organization, your internal staff. You could also have a resident-led team manning up some of these actions. And how would you do it? Well, the first step I would recommend is developing a goal. With energy, a lot of times it's fairly easy to be able to say, well, we can measure something. We want our goals to be SMART, so we want them to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So if I'm developing a goal with energy, we're typically able to measure that, and we're able to maybe, based on our existing utility expenses, we're able to say, well, how much do you think we could save by working on engaging our residents in these energy-saving changes, and also setting a timeline on it. From there, I always recommend choosing very specific behaviors. As I said, the term saving energy is very broad, so choose some specific behaviors that people know that they can take action to do. And after you compare that with your community background information, making sure you're addressing specific behaviors that they can achieve and that they will actually interact with. And another really important piece of this that I like to cover is determining your barriers to changing those behaviors. That can be done in understanding the community, and also as you ask people, why are you not turning off your lights? Or what is going on that is causing you to turn the heat to 80 degrees? Asking them questions to understand what is their current level of knowledge, along with what barrier is standing in the way for them to change. A really great example I love to share is I always look at lights as an easy, achievable action. I try to turn my lights off, of course, as much as I possibly can when I don't need them. We were working in a senior facility one time and started asking the seniors, why is it that you leave your lights on overnight, or when, mostly overnight? And when I got the answer, it really opened my eyes to the barrier piece. They basically started telling us, well, in the middle of the night when I have to get up and go to the bathroom, I don't want to trip and fall. And that was eye-opening to me. It was thinking, instead of thinking of a simple behavior that I thought was very simple and easy to achieve, these seniors were actually more fearful that they would fall and get injured and be hurt. So the barrier that existed was helped us to determine what kind of strategies we would go to. So next slide, step number 3 would be developing your engagement strategies. Again, developing these strategies based off of the first 2 steps. And really what we're doing here is determining the best strategies that are going to help you achieve the goal that you set and achieve the specific key areas of focus that you've decided on. Who can do the engagement strategies? I'll give a couple examples of strategies. It could be flyers and brochures, such as the ones that were mentioned before. It could also be if you're lacking some motivation of getting residents involved. If they're not paying their utility bills, you may not want to be educating them on how to read a utility bill, but you could be educating them on, what ways do them saving energy impact their community? What ways does that impact them as a whole? And the other ideas could be, implementing pledges. They could be taking pledges to be an active part of their community. Again, building that community part of it. Some people like to implement challenges. If you're looking at doing this in multiple buildings, you could have the buildings compete towards each other, and they're getting engaged, maybe changing habits towards energy in order to compete with their neighbors. So who could do things along those lines, those kinds of strategies? It might be your internal staff. If you're creating kind of a campaign around this, it might be graphic designers. It might also be the Department of Energy's resources that they already have. You could hire energy consultants. You could partner with nonprofit organizations. That's essentially what Energy Outreach Colorado does. And you could maybe partner with community centers. Again, kind of looking at your network that's already around you. And how would you go about doing this? Really using the knowledge that you've gained of your barriers in order to determine what strategy you might implement. If you know, as I already said, if you know residents aren't paying their own utility bills, you might not want to necessarily educate them on how to read the utility bill. But if residents are paying the utility bills, again, that might be a great opportunity to help them understand what is going on with my utility bill. I don't understand how to read this or what all these numbers mean, and kind of getting them to the next level. You can also utilize your existing infrastructure. So you might already have a residents council or a resident team of some sorts. Build off of that, maybe forming a green team around it that can be achieving energy savings, or that team can also really bring the ideas to their neighbors themselves. As I said, I'm going through multiple steps that can really require a lot of time if you put a lot of effort into each of them. So creating some type of team around it that might be resident-led not only empowers them to want to take action, but it could also decrease the amount of staff time that exists for this kind of work. And also the last point is really allowing education to infiltrate into all the strategies. I think education is super important and a really key ingredient into all of this, but also there's so many strategies to continue to make it really fun and continuing the motivation, so that knowledge alone isn't what is pushing action. It might be, again, like the competitions or utilizing your door-to-door audits that are already taking place. If you're already in the unit, being able to talk with people about how they're currently using their home and using energy and things like that. So increasing their awareness, but really motivating them as well to participate in this. Next slide. And then steps 4 and 5, there's not too much to dig into here. This is really the meat of everything. Of course, once you've done all the background research, then you want to establish your infrastructure, gather all the people that you have already listed that could help with these efforts, gather all the supplies, and create a timeline. I really recommend starting with just a pilot if you really want to start and see how it's working for you, in order to then test and see if those steps are working well. So creating a shorter timeline and then maybe looking at a bigger picture, longer timeline of what this could look like. Step 5, then executing the program, putting everything into place and really start engaging the residents. Next slide. Step 6 then is tracking your progress and evaluating. This is really recommended because this increases motivation. This might be your motivator. If you're really motivated into finding some energy savings for your buildings, these numbers are going to be key for you. Or maybe it's your boss that's asking for that. Or maybe you are management and you are wanting to highlight a bigger picture goal. Really going back to your original SMART goal and then tracking progress to it. Also, tracking progress, and especially with energy conservation, you're able to track that and see our efforts actually making an impact. So it's a great reminder that our actions are making a difference, and again, it demonstrates the success or possibly the lack of success to the appropriate people. If we're not meeting our goal, it helps us evaluate, well, why are we not meeting our goal? What is happening? Are the residents not actually getting engaged? Or if you are meeting the goal, continuing to put those successful pieces of this into place. Who could be doing this? You could have an energy consultant tracking your bills. It could be the staff. And really the how, if it's the staff doing it, a lot of organizations I've worked with might have a lot of people already have an existing accounting method. If you have multiple buildings, you might have a central office with accounting taking care of the utility bills for the entire building. My recommendations on that would just be to find a way to connect those energy bills to the actual building. This is a great opportunity for building staff to also become more knowledgeable of the utility bills, how they're structured in the area in which you live. They might live close by, and that might help them understand their own utility bills a little bit more. But when they're looking at the utility bills, if something spikes or something really drastically changes, you're able to maybe find out what's going on in the building much sooner. Again, kind of bridging that gap between like the fact that our energy is coming from somewhere, it's then coming to our building. If our residents or some part of the equipment is malfunctioning, we are then able to catch it much sooner rather than later. Some people are able to track their bills in a simple Excel spreadsheet. If you want to look at some cost ways to do it, Energy Star Portfolio Manager is one. There's GreenQuest, VigoWise, Energy Cap. There's lots of programs out there that can do it internally for you that can help also weather normalize the data as well, since we know weather will have an impact on it. But again, overall, the goal is to evaluate what is taking place in order to then go back and say, is the time we're spending on this actually making an impact? Next slide. And last but really not least is number 7, creating a culture shift. Really what I mean by this is that the goal is that the overall building, the building residents, the staff are a much more energy literate building. And as residents participate in these actions and they become habits, eventually the culture shift takes place and there's some persistence in this program. I think if you are looking at doing this, and what we try to do is work within every single building and spend as much time as we possibly can with the residents and with the staff. And the goal is that there then can be less time in between the different strategies you're putting into place or the different conversations that are taking place, because it becomes more of a part of the culture. You might have new residents move in and be able to already they can tell that this is kind of the way the energy is being used, and they are able to then also mock those same behaviors. One example I always like to share is I had recently moved into a new place, and I always, of course, I turn my porch light off, and my neighbors around me on both sides always leave their porch lights on, and it was funny because at first I thought, I wonder why they're leaving their porch lights on. Am I supposed to be leaving my porch light on to also show something? It just kind of made me laugh thinking about what is, I'm looking around me, looking at the culture that's around me, even though I still, of course, make sure I turn my porch light off. And really, when the culture shift takes place, it just requires less time and energy for continual implementation in the future. You'd really want to just continue to keep all parties involved long term. So whoever helped develop the program, keeping it going, and again, making that kind of the norm of the building. And what we recommend on how is creating a long-term plan with, again, long-term goals. So starting with your pilot, but remembering, where do I want this to go long-term? What do I want my residents to get out of this? What do I want the benefits for our site to be? Providing consistent follow-up and feedback, again, kind of reaffirming this culture shift and reaffirming the energy knowledge, and continually providing that feedback to residents, because they probably are going to be new habits that they're learning. Always remember to celebrate the successes and sharing the stories. If I'm doing an energy efficiency story, instead of sharing a picture of a CFL light bulb, sharing a story of how the energy efficiency or the energy conservation really played a role specifically for the families. Next slide. And now that we've gone through steps 1 through 7, I thought I would go ahead and highlight just a few of the lessons learned. So Energy Outreach Colorado As far as multifamily programs go, we oversee the state weatherization multifamily program along with our utility multifamily program. Within the state weatherization program, funding allows for us to do the energy conservation in conjunction with energy efficiency. So if you're a person on the phone who is going to be doing some energy efficiency work, here's a great opportunity to pair energy conservation to it. If you're not doing energy efficiency, you still have the great opportunity of doing energy conservation and really creating more energy literate culture in your buildings. As Energy Outreach Colorado has done these projects, within the state weatherization program, we've worked in 52 multifamily projects, so it's been over 5,000 units that have been weatherized through the Department of Energy, severance tax, state LEAP funds in Colorado. So we've spent over $13.2 million in energy efficiency, and within those projects, we've also started from, our initial process started kind of bare bones. We basically just handed out only brochures and only magnets and gave information to residents, where now we've gone through the process of now looking at how can we implement these 7 steps more efficiently and really customize the approach to each individual organization we're working with. The community characteristics vary, and we want to be able to customize it to what their needs are. A couple other lessons learned are lack of persistence. So as far as our role at Energy Outreach Colorado, we come from the outside in. You all have the really great benefit of being someone already internal in your organization or having constant access to your staff who are internal and really have the background knowledge already at least the pieces of that background knowledge already there. So when we require it with energy efficiency funding, this also kind of led to a decreased involvement once our process wrapped up, because we then left and we really are trying to figure out ways to continue the persistence internally for the organizations. Also, lack of leadership, sometimes in cases, one of the challenges I see is it really takes someone to champion this cause. I think if you're really dedicated to it, it really just takes somebody to oversee it. As I said, this can be, a full-time job, or again, starting where you can and being able to provide as much resources as you can to your residents in order to help them begin to connect these dots. Tracking results, we at Energy Outreach Colorado, I really recommend people tracking their results, but because we did energy efficiency along with the energy conservation, we've seen high energy savings achieved, but the program doesn't demonstrate just the behaviors alone. So in the future, my goal is to hopefully track some specific results for behavior program. What I found is some really great successes are increased understanding. This is internally at Energy Outreach Colorado. We've been able to better understand the affordable housing culture as it's related to their energy use. I think as we, it's really easy, especially as I talked earlier about barriers, it's really easy for us as, as people working within the affordable housing world to assume that barriers exist versus actually understanding if those barriers exist. I can't say I have an understanding of every barrier that might exist to someone changing their habits around energy, but I can say my knowledge is drastically increased, which helps me better meet the person where they're at in order to kind of, again, connect them to things that really matter to them when it comes to their energy use. We've also really learned to take a customized approach. I think, again, you all have the great benefit of being within your own organization and being able to spend the time of customizing it to your own building and your own building's needs. We're working on saying, let's look at a senior property and take steps 1 through 7 and all these very specific details to each of those buildings, where it might be a senior building, but there could be a different cultural context for one building varied to the other. And so really being able to spend time to understand those things, I think is a huge, has a huge benefit. And also at Energy Outreach, we've been able to have program manager buy-in. So I don't manage the funding for the multifamily sites, but someone else does. And so we've been able to really get those program managers who are overseeing the energy efficiency funding start the conversations very early, and they're, essentially buying into the process as well and allowing these conversations to be a part of the entire energy process that's taking place in all of the multifamily buildings. So with that said, that essentially summarizes quite a detailed process as much as I could possibly summarize it in a shorter amount of time. So that wraps it up.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. I'd like to, before we have any folks on the phone who have questions and want to submit those or raise your hand so I can unmute you. You talked about, I think, two important terms here, and maybe you could give some examples of an energy efficiency project versus an energy conservation project that you've seen in a multifamily or public housing unit.
Yeah, definitely. So you mean like what are the different aspects that exist based on my work between energy efficiency projects and
for energy efficiency versus that conservation?
Gotcha. Yeah. So within our funding, what we've done is we've funded an energy efficiency project at a multifamily building. So again, they're typically looking at what types of equipment can we change out that is old and outdated, and can we upgrade to save energy kind of on its own within our building. So as that process is taking place, we are then also working with the residents and having conversations to help them understand how specifically on the energy conservation side the behaviors really impact the overall performance of the building as well. That's kind of an energy efficiency project combined with energy conservation. As far as energy conservation on its own, we are now working within a housing authority to do specifically resident engagement around energy and water savings. So there's no energy efficiency work combined with that, but we're looking at what are the residents, how are the residents using energy, what habits exist, and what barriers also exist to those habits, and how can we overcome them by getting them to be motivated to also save energy. Again, connecting all the aspects of it. How can it impact the environment? How does it impact their direct community? How does it impact their own utility bills? And how does it impact all the programs and resources that the housing authority is able to provide to them if they then engage in energy conservation and trying to bridge the gap of where energy is coming from and how how they are actually how they're using it.
Nicole, that's great. This is Josh. I would just point out that the on the basic level that efficiency is using energy more wisely, where conservation is the choices you make to use less energy. But thank you. So we have a couple questions to ask the attendees. One is, have you implemented anything like this already? And you can type in or raise your hand and we can unmute you if you wanted to talk directly. Okay. Another question would be, do we have a hand raised? Yes, we have a hand raised. So we're going to turn Ruth's microphone on. Thank you, Ruth. Go ahead. Can you go ahead and talk? Ruth? We see Ruth's hand raised. Maybe, Ruth, you could type your answer in for us. And while Ruth is typing her question or comment in, Catherine has asked, what would you say is the greatest source of energy literacy? That's an interesting question, Catherine, and maybe Nicole can answer as well. I mean, my perspective in terms of source of literacy is, it's a hard question. I think a lot of the kids, the younger generation are getting this type of information in their educational upbringing. So I think that's going to be one of the major sources. So I kind of call that like a bottom-up approach where the children impact the adult in understanding. So the nag factor would be one of the greatest sources of energy literacy, where kids are starting to say, hey, Mom, Dad, turn off your lights, or so on and so forth. But unfortunately, Ruth, we're not hearing you, so we'll go on to the next question, which is, what interest do you have in energy literacy with your residents or with your staff? If you want to raise your hand and we can unmute you.
One reason, I'll just jump in really quickly. One reason I kind of mentioned that question also, and I didn't dig into it too much in this presentation, talking specifically more about obviously engaging residents in energy literacy, but also I like to just think about, does our staff as a whole have the opportunity to become more energy literate as well, understanding how the utility bills work for our buildings and how, maybe as a resident service coordinator, how does that impact me, or how does that impact me? That's kind of where my mind was going with that question a little bit too. So.
Great. And Dina has asked, where can a PHA or multifamily owner obtain energy literacy materials? So our website, which is at energy/education, which Aaron can type in and share with everyone. We have downloads of the energy literacy framework. We have fun lessons for children. We've got like a solar pizza where if you ever have a pizza, you can turn that pizza box into a solar oven. That's a great at-home activity for families. We have as well coloring books to really get them early. And then we also have links to many other resources. As well, Energy Outreach Colorado, do you have resources available on your website?
We do have some like signage and things like that that are just kind of short tip sheets, along with we have like a short resource guide that you can also it helps residents pick something that they want to do to save energy, and the back side allows them to track their energy bills if that's something that's applicable to them. And that is on our website. My contact information is on here. I'd have to look at the exact link to where that is. I can look that up real quick.
Okay, now this is, we're going to ask if people could type in their response to this next question. As many of you, there's 100 of us on this call, we really want to know a couple of things. One is, 87% of you said you share brochures or you want brochures. What kind of information would you like in those brochures so as it relates to energy literacy? So if you could type in some answers there. We're cataloging all this, and then we'll meet with our friends at HUD to kind of see what we can't get out to you. So if you wouldn't be so kind as to type some answers into your chat box. And then also on the webinars, for future webinars, we would be happy to tailor webinars to your particular interest. We want to do a webinar series. We've talked about doing a monthly webinar, and we're curious sort of what type of webinars would be useful for you. So you can either raise your hand or type those in, or email us at Energy Literacy. But we really think that they should be, we want these webinars to be something they could be for your residents or for you, more information for you specifically. So yeah, appreciate you guys typing in this information. And if anyone, and also we've got 100 different, employees or people who are working at PHAs around the country. Feel free to raise your hand, and if you just want to add something or share an experience, I think it'll be beneficial to the whole group. So raise your hand and we can unmute you, or type in the box. Oh, I see a hand raised. Ed, I'm going to unmute you. 1 second. Thank you, Ed. All right, I've unmuted
Hello?
you. I'm not sure. Oh, go ahead, Ed.
Hi. I have a question for Nicole. Do you find that working with the utility companies, are they very helpful in trying to help the tenants and the housing authorities save money?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of our funding comes from our utility companies, and we're the ones out implementing the program. So on that front, as far as funding goes, they're obviously helping try to save the housing authorities money through some of their funding. As far as kind of, one-on-one contact with the residents, I'm not as much aware if that's actually happening. I do see resources around from the utility company and things like that. But the funding is basically funneled through us, and we're the ones implementing a lot of the energy efficiency and the conservation work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess what I find frustrating with our local utility company is they need to make money too. So I guess my concern is if we all were to save energy, they're just going to raise their rates to equal out the amount of energy that they're not purchasing and selling back to us.
Right. I mean, I think, I'm definitely not the expert on the phone right now today about the funding, but I definitely see where that perspective comes from, because I've asked that a couple times internally as well. How are the energy companies funding these programs when they also need to make money? And from what I do know, it's a lot of regulated funds that they're regulated to spend this money on low-income programs, and some of that has to do with the work that Energy Outreach Colorado has done and advocated for those funds specifically towards low-income programs. So as far as if the funding itself is replicated in other states, I'm not really fully aware of that. If somebody else has a similar funding situation, that'd be great to hear from it. But that's about as much as I can speak on the funding side of things. I think your perspective totally makes sense, though.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Leroy. If I can add to that, I work in the public housing office, and we have incentives for public housing authorities to negotiate with the local utility companies. So we encourage our public housing authorities to do that. I mean, it takes a series of negotiations to work with them, but there is opportunity to save money by negotiating the rate that you pay for your facilities. So if you want to talk about that separately, we can do that as well.
Thank you, Leroy. So we have about just a couple minutes left, and I have one more question before we throw the last poll at you. People said in the survey, in the poll earlier, that they would be interested in events at their location. If you wouldn't mind typing in, and again, we're cataloging this so that way we can have more discussions later. What type of events would you envision, or could you see being helpful and beneficial? As well, would you be focusing those events at any age demographic? Would you be looking at your younger younger residents or your older residents? So we really appreciate if you could just type that in so we can get some feedback. And while people are typing, Nicole, there's a question from Cody. Are there programs that can track energy usage?
Yeah, there are lots of different programs out there. It depends on the details that you really want to track. The one that we use internally, and there's typically a cost for them, but I think it's a really great resource for housing authorities to be able to look at a kind of a big picture of each facility. The one we use internally is called Energy Cap. There's one that, I know Energy Star Portfolio Manager is now allowing to track multifamily buildings, and the really cool thing about that one is that you can track your bills and then you can become an Energy Star rated facility if you'd like to pursue that. That does take some engineering costs. You pay an engineer to basically approve the details that get put in, but you could pursue something like that, or you can use it for free and track the utility bills. I think I actually said earlier it was a cost-associated one, but it is actually free, to the best of my knowledge. Another one that I've recently become aware of is called WeGoWise. Again, you could search WeGoWise.com or EnergyCap.com or any of these and figure out what specific services they offer as far as tracking the utility bills. A lot of them will do weather normalization, so they'll look at the weather in your area and compare the utility bills in comparison to your last year or whatever year you choose as your baseline year, and be able to say weather will obviously impact your usage from year to year. So being able to kind of normalize it based on the weather that's taking place in your area. So those are a couple that kind of come to mind off the top of my head.
Thanks, Nicole. We're going to take one last hand raise from Brenda, and then we'll go to our last poll. Go ahead, Brenda.
I just was trying to figure out where to type in the information about what type of programs you would like to see, educational.
Okay, there should be a chat box, Brenda, but if you can't find that, you can just email energyliteracy@ee.doe.gov, and we'll add that to our to our stream of comments.
Till 3:30, but I think they're almost done.
Thank you.
That's a cool way to do stuff.
Actually, I just talked to everybody. There's 100 people out here from around the country, and I raised my hand. You hit a button that says "Raise your hand," and they said, "Ed, do you have a question?"
What was your question?
My question was, they're
Ed,
talking
we can
about.
hear you, but I'm going to go to the poll, and real quick, I'm going to launch this last poll, and we're kind of curious: was this webinar useful to you? So, all right, results are coming in. And we have a very few who said no, and a great majority saying yes and a little bit. So again, I think we're going to pass it to HUD to sign off. But again, if it was a little bit useful to you, please send us an email or a chat box right now. Let us know how we can make it more useful. But Leroy, why don't you close it down for us? I muted all. Sorry. And let me. Here you go, Leroy. Sorry, Leroy, I had muted you. Go ahead. All right. Leroy, we lost you. So we would like to thank everyone for participating today and also for all your comments. They're going to be constructive and help us create a webinar series that we hope will continue to add value. So without further ado, have a great day. And we'd also like to thank Nicole from Energy Outreach Colorado for putting those slides together. So keep your eyes open for our next webinar, and hopefully we'll give you more information on how energy is everywhere. Take care.